the window boxes are done, assembled anyway, my wife decided she didn't want to go with the natural wood finish. We got white and black trim on our house, so we decided to go with black. Considered white, so I painted one side white, and we held them up to the house, and she decided she wanted to go with the black, so black it is. And I just thought I'd mention that my wife is a hairdresser, and with color on hair, they always say you can darken hair with color, but you cannot lighten hair with color, and that applies to a lot of other stuff too. It's pretty hard to lighten things, particularly with stain. So if you're not sure what type of finish you want, go with the lighter one first, and progressively work your way darker if you don't like your initial results. Because you can, like I say, it's pretty easy to go darker, but it's pretty hard to go lighter. So after, you know, holding up to the house and testing them, see what we like the best, we're going to go with the black. All right, sports fans, it's time to paint the window boxes. And before I get started on that, I just thought I'd address one thing, and that's what kind of paint do I use. And for wood, metal, anything, might surprise you, but regular old Rust-Oleum oil-based enamel for metal, I don't care whether it's wood, metal, or anything, that's what I use because that's what I've had the best luck with by far over the years. You might think it sounds kind of crazy to use Rust-Oleum on wood, but I'm telling you, over the course of time, the things I've used Rust-Oleum on, and you spill it on a piece of wood, and it lasts forever. You have that wood laying outside. You can use it for ramps. Use stuff for trailer blocks, for wheel chocks. It'll sit outside in the weeds for who knows how long, and the Rust-Oleum holds up. And you weren't even doing any prep work. You are trying to be careful with it. But even right here, who knows how long ago that was painted, but it was years ago. Same thing here. Just from when you drop that red paint, it's spilled on dirty wood. And it's holding up fine. That's probably been there for a good 15 years, that red paint. I just kind of stumbled across it, you know, when I was moving a piece of equipment. A lot of times you'll use wood blocks to block something up while you're painting it, okay? And when you're done painting, you just throw the wood blocks aside, save them, use them for something else, and you might use it for a wheel chock on a trailer that you have sitting out in the weeds for years, but you pulled out that wheel chock and that Rust-Oleum on it, it was in perfectly good shape. So as far as I'm concerned, from my experience, you just can't beat the durability of Rust-Oleum. And furthermore, you know, I had a hell of a time keeping paint sticking on the trim of my house. So I finally said the hell with it, and I went for it. I used Rust-Oleum on the house trim, and that's holding up by far and away better than any latex paint I've ever used. It's not peeling off, it's not chipping, it's not chalking. I mean, it's doing everything you could want a paint to do. It does, and by far better than anything else I've ever seen. And when it comes to metal, holy cow, you know, a snowplow bracket, you know, you're talking about the worst of conditions. And how old is that since it's been painted? It's got to be at least 10 years. And for things like snowplows themselves, you know, a lot of times stuff is powder coat finish these days, and I suppose that's fine for a car show, but boy, in real life, as far as I'm concerned, powder coating, it just isn't worth a damn. It'll peel off in big hunks, where Rust-Oleum, you hit something, yeah, you might scratch it, but it's not peeling off in big chunks. Just check out a Western snowplow that's a few years old with the factory paint job on, because that's powder coat. It'll bust off in 6x6 inch chunks. Here's some more Rust-Oleum spilled who knows how long ago. That's a workbench that gets pounded on it, and it just holds up. I can't say enough good things about it. Used it on my salt spreader here. We're talking about in the worst of conditions, you know. And this is, oh, that paint job there. I bet that's 7 years old, and just getting salt thrown all over it, rock salt, getting beat up. It's on the back of a truck, getting sprayed with road salt slush and crap. Like I say, I'm a firm believer in Rust-Oleum. All right, the window boxes, their painting is done. Now I didn't show you the actual painting of it, and the biggest reason is I didn't want to get paint all over my cell phone or my camera. I assume that most of you know how to paint, so I didn't video that, but just a few of the finer points of it. As far as I'm concerned, you cannot beat Rust-Oleum paint, a regular old Rust-Oleum oil-based enamel for wood, metal, you name it. And the other thing, as far as priming is concerned, I never prime stuff. I'll thin down the Rust-Oleum for the first coat, put a little bit of thinner in it, but second coat, then I just use it straight. All right, what else do we got here? Stirring paint. You know, they'll always give you the paint paddle when you buy a can of paint at the store, okay? And you know, that's all fine if they mix it at the store for you. You're going to use it fairly soon after you get home. But what happens with me quite often is I'll buy paint for a project, and for whatever reason it gets sidetracked and you know, project doesn't get done. You know, it's months after I bought the paint for the project finally gets to the point where you're painting. The other thing I do is I'll buy my paint in gallons because it's just so much cheaper. If you're using in general paint, okay, if you can get the job done using a quart, by all means use the quart, because you won't have much paint. The ideal thing with paint would be to use the exact amount you need, and it's all gone by the time you're done at the end of the job, because that way you don't have to store it. Paint does get a hard film over the top, you know, if you store it, no matter how hard you try. Like I said, if you can do the job with a quart, buy a quart. But as soon as you need more than a quart, if you have to buy 2 quarts because the job's going to take a quart and a half, you'll find that a gallon is about the same price as 2 quarts in general paint. So as soon as you need more than a quart, you might as well buy the gallon. So I have this gallon paint. Bought it when I first last time I redid my snow plows, which is probably about 4 years ago now. And I've had to dip into that paint, use that paint here and there. You know, it always has the crust. I have to cut it off with a razor blade and throw that crust away. You waste some amount of paint there, but it's nowhere near as much as if as much money spent if you just were buying a quart every single time. So what I'm saying here is, if you need more than a gallon for if you need more than a quart for doing a particular job, you might as well buy a gallon. But then, of course, you do have the paint that's been sitting around for 100 years, and it separates. It needs to be stirred, and rather than just using a paddle, I'd make this, took a bolt, and I cut it off. That's a 3/8 bolt, and I cut off the head, and then I bent a piece of aluminum and put a lock nut on each side, made a kind of a propeller. That works great for stirring paint. Way better than mixing it with a paddle. If you're just mixing it with a hand paddle, what happens is you get tired of doing it, and you just quit because, you know, you've been doing it for X amount of time, your hand gets tired, and you think, well, that's good enough. Well, you're going to get the paint more stirred up in 1 minute with that drill than you are in 10 minutes of doing it by hand. So, and once again, use a cord drill. A cordless drill, they just don't have the nuts to get the job done, particularly if it's a full gallon of thick paint. And then the last thing I got for you is, when you're painting, I would say by far and away the most important thing is to buy a good quality brush. Don't get cheap on the brush, okay? You'll see brushes there for 99 cents, okay? And for some things, like stuff you really don't care about, you just want to get some paint slopped on it, and you don't want to clean the brush. The cheap brush is the way to go. But if it's something you care about the way it looks, spend the money. Spend $7-8 for a brush. It's worth every single penny. It will make a huge difference in the quality of your finished product. You won't have near as many brush strokes in it. You won't have bristles coming off. You don't have individual brush hairs dried in the paint. It's worth the money to get the brush. But since you spent all that money on the brush, make sure you clean it right away. Which brings me to one other thing. In general, when it comes to paint, stains, things of that nature, I'm pretty much of the attitude, if it cleans up with water, it's crap. You know, you got to have something where you're going to be using paint thinner, or my favorite thing is gas. That's what I use to clean up Rust-Oleum every single time. I just use gasoline, and I clean up the brush immediately after the job's done, and I find a scrap piece of lumber, and I just paint on the lumber there to get the excess gasoline out of it. If it's still dirty, I'll clean it again, but it doesn't take up much gas. You can use a small can as you can fit the brush in, and that brush will stay nice for years if you do that. So buy good quality brushes and take care of them. That's my advice for you there.